Welcome back to the New Little Life channel. Today we have another client interview, and I'm really looking forward to diving into her story because Lauren has been an absolute pleasure to work with, and she's still kind of right in the middle of her experience. And I think it's sometimes fun to hear from moms who are at the end and have done the thing, but also some that are in the middle and are just doing so much better, particularly for Lauren, than her first experience. So it's going to be really fun to kind of compare and contrast her first experience and then the second one, and just kind of see what she learned, what she's done differently, and how she's navigating pumping and balancing her mental and emotional health as a really busy working mom. So welcome, Lauren. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Thank you for having me.
Can you just give us a quick introduction of who you are and your little ones, kind of your work environment? And then I would really love to start with your first experience, I think, and kind of tell us what that's like. And then let's compare that to now and kind of see what's changed and learned from you.
Yeah, so my name is Lauren. I have two kids. I have a 2.5-year-old and an 8-month-old. I've had experience working in a few different offices. I mostly work within an office, sometimes from home. My first experience was drastically different than my experience this time around. With my son, when he was born, in the hospital, never latched. Did not experience a single latch in the hospital. We saw multiple lactation consultants, and I just got a lot of questions of, has your anatomy always been this way? And of course, you're going, "Oh, I thought this was normal. I did not know that this would be an issue potentially for latching." So in the hospital, they brought me the pump there to immediately start pumping, and of course, they just bring you the flanges that they come with, which I believe with the hospital I was at, it was a Meta, so they were 25 millimeter flange.
Sounds right. Mm-hmm.
They brought that in, and thankfully when I got home, we had a family member who had gifted me a pump, so I did have one when I got home because I wasn't expecting to have to pump. I just thought, oh, I'll just breastfeed and that it'll just be it. But even in my head, I thought, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But I didn't think through the logistics of if I don't breastfeed, I'm going to have to pump, and what is that going to be like? I didn't think through that at all. And I go home and not being able to latch for the first 7 weeks, I exclusively pumped. I think I cried every single day. It was, when I say exclusively pumping, it was with a pump that had to be plugged into the wall. And to keep it away from my dogs at the time, I kept it in one of the bedrooms. So every time I had to pump, I would leave the room, leave my baby, like, to go into that room and pump. And it was really mentally and emotionally draining. I'm already struggling with all the postpartum hormones, and there's so much already happening, and then you put that on top of it, and you're like, why can't I just feed my baby? Like, why is this not working? Why do I have to do this? Because in the hospital they said, has your anatomy always been this way? I thought that just meant I was never going to be able to breastfeed. Like, if that's just how this just is what it is. And I finally did speak to somebody who said, no, you need to go see somebody else. You need to go out and see a lactation consultant. Somebody's going to be able to help you. You're not in the hospital anymore. Your baby's a little bit older. Like, y'all can figure it out. So I did finally see somebody, and she was able to help me latch first time. It was great. So I was so thankful. I was finally learning how to nurse. But then I returned to work, and I was nursing so much after I'd just gotten the hang of it. Then we had to return to work. But prior to that, when I was just constantly going in, stuck to the wall all the time, like leaving the room, I'd have him next to me, but if he cried, then I had to like turn everything off, take everything off, be like, are you hungry? Like, do you need to be changed? I'm in the middle of this pump. Oh, did this get knocked over? I'm going to cry because I just got spilled. All of that. I had been hearing about that there were wearable pumps where you didn't have to be tethered to the wall and didn't have, just go in and like move and go about your day. And I thought that would be the answer to all of my problems. I thought, if I get this wearable pump, then I'll be able to like move around the house, and whenever I have to have any issues with like leaving my baby, I can hold them at the same time. It's going to be like great. I thought it would fix all my issues. It helped. It was nice to, I was able to do more things, but it did not fix all of my issues.
Which
It did.
wearable pump did you end up getting?
I got the LV, um,
Yeah.
and like not the LV Stride, but the regular LV. And that's when I also realized that I could look at insurance to help with a pump. I didn't know the first time around was that first pump was gifted to me, and then I realized you could use insurance, but with the LV, it was just a tiny little bit that
Yeah,
it
not a lot.
really
It's
helped
expensive
with.
pump. Yeah.
Yeah, it was still very expensive. So it did help to be able to move around. It was fit nicely in the shirt and everything. But I learned very quickly that if I moved any sort of direction more, like I was leaking. It was getting my bra soaking wet. If I had anything more than 2 or 3 ounces, like it was just. If I was riding in the car and the car was bumpy, it was like bumping, coming out into
Yeah.
my bra and my shirt. So I really, really struggled with that. And because that had happened so many times, and like one time not one time, there was a couple times where the sensor didn't, because it's supposed to cut off when it senses that there's
Yeah.
5 ounces
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
there,
Hmm.
and sometimes it just wouldn't sense it, and it was just overflowing and coming out. So I got really, really nervous about it. So I was constantly, when I was pumping, like I was just so tense. I was so tense, even though I could move around. I was so tense. And that's the pump that I took back to work, so that I was in the office that I was in at that time was a shared office space. And they did have a room for me to go into and pump, but because of the workload and everything that we needed to be done, I didn't feel very comfortable to go in there for, 30 minutes at a time, to pump. So I would go into the room to put them on, and then I'd go back to my desk and continue to work while I pumped, which was, it was helpful to have that. I'm very thankful that I had them to be able to do
Yeah.
that.
Hmm.
Um, but the whole time that I was pumping at my desk, like I was so stressed. Like I was so tense. I was so stressed out. I was just like, oh, please don't move the wrong way. Well, I might spill, and I don't want to do that while I'm at work. I don't have like extra changes of clothes. So it was a very um, it was a very, very stressful time. And then I would come home, and because I'd been nursing my son, and I would come home and nurse him when I came home, but it wasn't like super, super consistent the way that I do with my daughter now. So there were times that if he just wasn't feeling it, he wasn't feeling it, and I'd be like, "Oh, do I really have to pump again?" So it was just a lot mentally and emotionally. I really, really struggled the first time, and I didn't have the knowledge of all the different things that could help. Even things like I didn't know that a wearable comes with its own issues. I thought it was going to solve all my problems, but I didn't know that it came with its own issues. I didn't know that if I was going to use that exclusively, how it might not get everything out all the time. Um, I didn't know that I was going to deal with leaking issues. I didn't know that the some of those parts were going to be a bit more expensive to replace. I dealt with things cracking, and I I didn't know all of that.
Were you still able to make enough milk for your baby? Like, was it kind of working? Or what was the point when you decided this is enough? I think I'm done with this.
So before I returned to work, I had quite a large freezer stash. I in the beginning when I was pumping, I was making way more than he was eating. So I had a large freezer stash when I went back to work. Um, but as I returned to work, I noticed at some point, but it was like my supply was going down and down and down. And I think it's a multitude of reasons. I was very stressed out. I was using a wearable basically exclusively, and not, knowing all the techniques to make it work better for me. I was
Sure.
just literally like throwing them on and like sitting there and not knowing anything that I could do to make it better. So there were things that my supply was slowly going down and down. And at one point, I got sick and got on antibiotics, and I never even knew that that could affect. But looking back on it, I'm like, yeah, that definitely affected it as well.
Mm.
Um, so it just kept going down and down and down, and then I realized we were just dipping into my freezer stash. So it was like, because I could see at one point when I stopped freezing things, because I was no longer extra. I stopped freezing things, and then at some point I was like, oh, we have to use the freezer stash now. Now I'm pumping and using stuff, but now we're having to use the freezer stash. And because I was already so stressed out, and my husband, when I was on maternity leave, there was a few times where he just stopped and turned to me, like, just in a coming from a loving space of saying, if this is too much, like, there is for like, it's okay if you like, you don't have to do this if this is too much, essentially. Which,
Yeah.
as we all know, it's you have strong reactions to hearing things like that sometimes. But I appreciated um, that he was like, you don't have to struggle with this. Like, there are other options. Like, if you need to, but I didn't want to. For the formulas that I had read, I wasn't super comfortable with some of the stuff that I had read in the ingredients. And they're obviously they're wonderful. They save a lot of babies' lives, and a lot of babies do wonderful on them. But I really wanted to not have to use that. Um, and so ultimately, as I was going down and down and down, and I realized, just I was so stressed out about it. I was like, I think I'm going to have to start looking into this. And this might ring oddly to some people, but when he was looking into formulas, he would say, "Why does everything have soy in it? Why does everything have this corn syrup in it? Why does all these things? Like, the only ones that I see that don't have this are like in Europe. How do you even get formula from Europe?" And
Yeah.
I spoke to a family member who said, "Oh yeah, I have friends that's where they've ordered theirs too." And
Mhm.
so at the time that I was so stressed out, I was just desperately trying to find a formula that I was comfortable with.
Yeah.
And so we were getting ones in and trying them and seeing how he did on them. And so when he found one that it seemed like he was doing, took well to, I was like, okay, I'm ready. I'm so stressed out trying to keep up with this. It's not working. It's not going well. And so I'm ready to have order this formula in bulk, have it, and then I will finish, and we will just finish out my freezer stash. Um, it was just not a great experience the whole first time around.
Yeah.
So, cut to when I got pregnant with my daughter, I I was like, okay, I'm going to try breastfeeding again, but I need to it needs to go better this time
Yeah,
around.
for sure. We're
Because
not doing that again. Yeah.
yeah, like, I can't do that again. So I was doing a lot of research. I watched a lot of videos, and I definitely came across a few of your the reason why I was introduced into your channel was because when I was searching into wearables, you had a video,
Yeah. Mhm.
looking at wearables, and so that's how I was introduced to your channel. And so when I started doing more research about pumping again and tips about it, I kept coming across yours. So I was like, video after video after video,
It's a rabbit
and
hole there. It's
it is,
only go
it is,
there if you're ready to commit, man. It's a
it is.
place.
But I
Yeah.
was learning so much, and when I was listening to your stuff versus listening to other people, I was like, what you are saying is stuff that is like tangible stuff that makes sense, and it's the way that you talk about it is not, this is the answer. You can watch another video and be like, this is the answer, this is what you need to do. But for yours, it was like, it depends on your situation. It depends on your, there's so many different facets and factors to it. So but everything that you were saying made so much sense and was so helpful. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't get enough of this. I need to watch more and more. So I um I came across one video. I think it was the one that was called like when the wheels fall off, like when you
Yeah.
return back to work and the wheels fall off. And
Mhm.
I watched that and I was like, that is exactly, that's what I was going through, and that's what I was feeling. And so I was hearing about your program, and I was like, I just feel like because of all the information that you have just in the videos themselves, I'm like, that's already such helpful information. So if there's a program that has this kind of stuff but in more detail and like tailor it to me, like my specifics and my specific situation, like that's what I need. Um, and so I talked to my husband about it, and I was like, what do you think about this? I was like, what if we can do this versus like paying for a whole bunch of formula? Because I tell you, if I don't have help, I don't think I could make it the whole year without help. Like, we're gonna end up in the same boat. We're gonna end up having to switch to formula. So I don't see. So he did come and listen to the phone interview and be a part of that. And of course, you know, his only concern was exactly what it was before. He's like, it's just that's just the mental health aspect of it for me. I just want to make sure that like, you know, that that we have a good mother here, not just, somebody that's producing something just cause.
I love that. I just like tell you how much I appreciate your partner here, and just when we talk with moms about their situations and they tell us like these intense struggles that they're in and this confusion and overwhelm and frustration and stress, I will tell you that the most common resistance from a partner is the money. Like, that's too much money. It's like, but I love that your husband was like, I just want a happy wife. Like, and I see that you can make enough milk, because I actually think you had an oversupply both times here. So it wasn't necessarily like the milk was the problem, but he wanted a
Right.
happy wife and mother because he knows that that's the best. I mean, what better to invest in than having a relaxed and confident partner? So anyway, shout out to your partner, who is awesome. And I'm so glad that he could see that and know that you just needed some help in doing this. So very cool.
Mhm. Yeah, I really appreciated that. And of course, we had to think about that like financially,
For
to
sure.
test it
Yeah,
and
I totally
everything.
get it. Yeah.
But yeah, ultimately, it was just that was always his main thing was like mentally and emotionally. Like, I want to make sure that you're good. Our kids need you as you, not just the thing providing some milk.
Yeah.
Um, so I definitely appreciated that. So when we did that phone call and then we finally decided to move forward with it and I joined the program, I immediately had an initial sense of relief. Like I felt like my shoulders could drop just joining. I hadn't done anything yet. I hadn't like gone through the course. I hadn't gone in the community. I hadn't done the video call. Nothing. I just felt a sense of release being in it, because I knew that there was such good information in the videos already that I was so hopeful of what was there, and I was not disappointed. So this time around, when I had my baby,
Mhm.
she actually latched in the delivery room, which I was so happy, so pleasantly surprised. I could not believe it. She latched in the delivery room. Um, but then we move up to mommy baby room. She's latching every time, but I am in so much pain.
Oh,
It was really, I was raw. Um it was not good. Every
not the
time she
perfect picture you had hoped for in the
no, not
yeah.
not the
Oh,
perfect
that
picture I'd
happens.
hoped for. And same thing, we saw multiple lactation consultants in the hospital. And nothing was really kind of like helping. And at one point, I was just so raw and so in such pain. I was like, "Can you please just bring a pump? Can you bring a pump so I can at least get something out, like in somewhat comfortable, in a comfortable feeling? Give me a break for a second." And they brought it, and they brought the flanges, and they brought the like a nipple shield. I also had asked for a nipple shield. I was like, maybe
Okay.
that will help with how much pain I'm dealing with. And I asked when they brought it, I said, "Is the nipple shield size?" She goes, "Oh yeah, it's size." She's like, I assessed you. Like that the stuff that I brought, I assessed you that this is your size. Well, the size of the flange was a 25, and I can tell you now that's definitely not my size. Now that was post, I just given birth, so I'm sure
Sure,
there was
sure.
swelling
But
and things are different size,
yeah.
but I was you just looked at me. You didn't
Yeah.
sign me, you
Like,
didn't put
we just
anything up
did
it.
this
You just
last.
looked at me and you're like, I assessed you, this is your size.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it was not the right size, but I pumped with it. And but it was hard to look at these teeny tiny little milliliters of colostrum, even though I know in my head it's colostrum.
Sure.
There's not she's not drinking a lot right now, but I would see it and I was like pumped like 3 times in a row, and like each time it was like a little less and a little less, and I was like, I can't. No, I'm gonna bear through it. I'm gonna grit my teeth and I'm bear through it, and I'm just gonna let her nurse.
Yeah.
Um, and I did. I went home and I used the pumps that I had at home because I had a few more options this time around. I learned that it was important to have a tabletop, not just have a wearable for me. If I'm going to be going to work and I'm going to be, pumping a lot, I
Mhm.
need to not just have a wearable. And after going through the experience of a lot of leaking, when I looked for one this time around, I was like, not leaking is going to be way more up there for me. It doesn't have to be perfectly discreet. I just need it to not leak on me. was a big one
Especially
for
at
me.
work, you can't have leaking pumps at work. Yeah, and the LV has made some strides recently in kind of fixing that a bit, but that it's known for not having very much wiggle room, especially with someone with a little bit of an oversupply, kind of filling up those
Mhm.
bottles. I mean, you cannot move very much with those. So yeah. So what did you end up
It
getting?
was. So at first, when I was still pregnant, I bought the Legendary Milk Duet, and I bought they had a sale at the time, and then I bought the Amani I2, which is also a Legendary Milk theirs. Because I was like, oh, silicone. I imagine that I haven't used silicone before, but I would imagine it's more comfortable than hard plastic. So I'm going to try that. And based off of the way that the seal is, I was like, the hole is way up there at the top. So even if I were to bend over a little bit, I still haven't reached the top of it yet. So there's
Yeah.
got to be better with the idea of leaking. Like if I'm bouncing around in a car and it's shaky, it's not going to probably not leak too much on me. So I had gotten both of those, and then I went through insurance and I got myself a Spectra, um, and the one that you plug into the wall.
Okay.
And so those are what I had at home when we came home from the hospital. So because I was raw, I was pumping some more at home because I knew I watched so much. I learned how to use them, so I felt more comfortable to be able to use them. Um, and we maybe a week into it, no, when we came home, she was maybe 5 days old, 4 or 5 days old. I went to see the lactation consultant in our pediatrician's office, and she was able to help me. And we really were able to get nursing and latching down. So but because I'd had an oversupply, I I couldn't get away from I couldn't like totally get away from pumping
Okay.
because she was eating so little, but what I was producing was so much. So I did, try not to do it too much because I was trying to be like, let her regulate me, let her do her thing. But there, because I'd already had some pumping in there, I'm sure I was my own enemy in creating more of a oversupply as well. Like I'm sure there are some things that if I would have started this from the very, very beginning, that which is what I will say again, I wish I would have started this when I was pregnant.
Yeah.
um, not into my maternity leave. Um, but it is what it is. And as she started sleeping more and more, and we would go longer stints, I was having these way larger amounts that I was producing. So by the time we got into, her sleeping 6+ hours, into 8 hours a night, my morning pump was just so big. So there was like, even if I went the whole day of just nursing her, that morning pump, I was still going to have to pump. So all that to say, I was still pumping regardless. That was still happening. When I joined the program, I was so relieved because I knew that I was going to be going back to work, and I was so scared of things not going well again because first time around I had a freezer stash. This time around I had this freezer stash. I had this oversupply. I had this stuff that was there, but I'd already been through that not being the answer to everything.
Yeah.
So I was so relieved to get in there. And then when I got in and I was able to start going through the curriculum, and then the thing that I knew that was going to be helpful in the program was I knew y'all did flange sizing, and I like had pretty big suspicion I was not in the right flange size. But for the life of me, when I got nipple rulers and things myself, I could not figure it out. I could
Yeah.
not figure out where things were to even know what my measure myself. So I knew that y'all did that. Um, so I was very excited to get that part of it right. And I knew that you would be able to help things specific to me and my situation. So I was very excited about that. What I was not prepared for was how much the community of having other moms, being able to hear other moms' stories of what they're going through, knowing what their questions are and the suggestions to their questions was absolutely huge for me. I had no idea how much the support would be such a huge piece of it. Um, and I didn't know how, I knew that I struggled mentally and emotionally the first time around, but I didn't know how much of that would be able to, like, addressing that would be able to help in the whole process. I had no idea how much of that affects it. And that was that was such a huge piece for me. So as I went through the curriculum, yes, there was so much information and details. There's so much, the logistics of pumping and the technicalities of it, and there's a lot to it. And I feel like every day I still learn more. The more that I go back and read through things, or read that, I feel like I'm constantly learning new things. That I'm like, oh man, if I knew this from the beginning, that would be great. Um, and that was extremely helpful. But man, I had no idea about the support part of it. I had no idea what it would do for me to be able to be a part of the group, to be able to hear what other people are going through, and how everybody is different. Everybody, like as you said before, I didn't come into this program with a milk supply issue. That wasn't my problem. It's not like I wasn't making enough milk. That wasn't my issue. So being able to see that everybody has different types of things, not everybody's issue is the same, and even if something's similar, there's still so many differences to each person. I love being able to watch, and like I love being part of the weekly calls, and being able to hear what other people's questions are, and even if it's similar to somebody else's, your suggestion may not always be the same because their situation is different. Every person is different, and being able to see you find, not only is their situation different, but you are tuning into where they're at mentally and emotionally as well. You've been so good about, like, well, is this sustainable for you? Like, I just want to make sure there's no burnout here. If that works great for you, then great. I just want to make sure that, like, you're good with that. Or do you feel good about this? How do you feel about that? You're very good at making sure you're tuning into where everybody's at mentally and emotionally, which I think is just huge. You can't get that from trying to do your own research and just reading and watching somebody else's video, because everybody is so different.
Yeah.
So it makes such a difference to not only experience it myself, but to see you do that with every person, has been so huge. And
Yeah.
I really, really appreciate that.
We actually hear that a lot from people that have come through our program. They join for the logistical help. Like, they've got problems, they've got questions, and they need that. It's so funny. Almost everyone that goes through this and participates and learns and is active like you says the exact same thing. I didn't realize how isolating it was to be a working mom and nobody gets it. And my partner loves and supports me, but they just cannot understand what I'm going through and they don't know how to help me. And they're amazing, but this is hard. And I think, honestly, getting to communicate in a group-based coaching program, which is what this is. I mean, I've said this on the channel before, and I'll be saying it more, is like, I'm not a lactation consultant. I really am a pumping working mom coach. We're here to help balance the practical aspects of making milk and pumping with the science, the science of lactation and pumping with the practical aspects of your life, because pumping is part of it, yes, but the overall, it's so tied to the mental and emotional state of you. And nobody gives you a gold star for dragging your tired, broken body across the finish line of your goal. And you may look back on that with some serious resentment, even if you did hit your milk goal. You know what I mean? And so that's why we've built this. And I love to hear you talk about the community like that. You've been so active on the calls and coming, even when you don't have questions. And I love that, because there's just such a sense. We screen everyone that comes in. You have to go through an application process. We have a member of our team that chats with you and gives you information. We learn about you because we want the community to feel like your peers, right? These are all people who are doing exactly what you're doing. Everyone's a working mom. They're doing a combination of breastfeeding or pumping or exclusively pumping, but pumping's a heavy part of your experience because you're leaving your baby, right? And sometimes it becomes more than you expect, and we're here for that. But I think I appreciated kind of hearing your experience on the other side of that, because that is one of my favorite parts. Is I remember we actually had our group call yesterday, and I remember chatting with a mom, and the plan that we proposed and gave her was a little different than, like, the exact same mom before had a very similar problem. And we gave her a little bit different recommendations, because I knew that this that the second mom was kind of burnt out emotionally. And I said, we have to be really careful that we're not shooting for gold here when we may just like fall off the train altogether if we don't kind of find a balance. So it's one of my favorite things, and why really I'm not doing any more one-on-one consults, this like individual. I'm not like a lactation consultant at this point. I really love being kind of a life coach who has like these skills in pumping that we can kind of make it all together. So really cool to hear you talk about your experience like that. I would love to know, like, maybe one or two things. I think two. I think you actually listed. What were the two like biggest aha moments that you've had kind of inside of our program?
So yes, definitely to flange sizing, which again, I suspected that I was off, but I didn't know how much so and how that can make a difference in comfort and output, and in time, the time it takes to get things out. That was a big one for me. And how it might take time to get to your right flange size. If you've been dealing with so much swelling like I did in the
Yeah.
beginning, it may take a minute to get down to the right one. And two, just the mental and emotional. I didn't know that what I needed, what was going to make such a difference for me, was the mental and emotional aspect. I knew that I struggled with it the first time around, but I did not realize how much of a difference it makes until I really got into this program, until I got in here and I was getting the support that I needed that I could turn it around mentally and emotionally. That was where the difference came. It was such a huge relief, because I kept feeling like, man, now I feel like I can make it to my goal. Like now I feel like I can make it a year, like being in this environment. And yeah, things might change and I might have to adjust things along the way, but because of this support and this environment, and the help that I can get, I feel that I can make it. Like I feel hopeful about it. I don't feel like I'm gonna crash and burn and have to stop earlier than I wanted to. Um, and am I there yet? No, I'm still on my journey, but I feel like I have the tools and the support that I need to be able to make it there, whatever that looks like. Um, which is another thing that I really appreciate about the program too, is that it's because it's different for everybody. Everybody's journey is different. That's another thing. It's like whatever your goals are and whatever it is that wherever you're at, like that's where we're meeting you. We're meeting you where you're at and whatever your goals are. Um, that I think that's so huge. That's so helpful.
So speaking of goals, what kind of are your goals? I think you're about 7, 8 months in, somewhere right in there, right?
She just made 8 months this week.
What are you hoping to do?
So I keep thinking through that.
And
I
we're not gonna set it in stone, so no pressure to like.
No pressure. Yeah.
Where's
I
your
mean,
mind at today? Yeah.
the goal is still to make it to at least a year, which I feel confident that I can make it to that. Now, how quickly that will happen, I don't know. Like, is it gonna like, am I gonna start tapering off right away? Like, I don't. I'm not quite sure. I feel like I'm open to however that looks. Now, I'm sure my husband would be happy to have a lot of these pump parts that I have everywhere in the kitchen be be placed somewhere else. That's taking over our very small, precious space that we have. Um, I'm sure that he would appreciate that too.
But if it
To go.
wasn't that, it would be bottles you're washing because you still have to feed this baby, you know? And
This is true.
so I'm like, sometimes when I look at that, I'm like, I get it, but also you're still washing bottles and dealing with formula and stuff. I know pumping parts do take up a little more space, but you know, six a dozen, six of
This
one,
is
half a dozen of the
yeah.
other. There you go.
So maybe as long as I can make it to a year for that full time, I have quite the freezer stash. I've donated a lot of milk at this point. Um, and so I even if I were to like cut off cold turkey at 1 year, there's still quite a ways to go there. But um, I feel like I'm just gonna go with however it feels and however it goes with follow the where am I at mentally and emotionally. If I'm struggling with it, it's okay to make decisions to make that right. So um, is I want to get the full time of pumping to a year, and then I'll kind of like reevaluate from there, where to go and how to taper off. Um,
That's
and
my favorite thing to kind of hear you say is that I just want to be in control of this experience and I want to end it when I want to end it. Because it kind of felt like the first time you kind of had to because it just was not sustainable. It was not where your milk supply was dropping and it just like, we just have to be done with this. And I hate that. What I want for you, I don't care if you go a year or 2 years or 6 months or 3 months. Our goal really is for you to be in control of your experience. And I think that brings a lot of peace to just know I understand what's happening with my body. I know how to do this. And I know that I can choose depending on what life throws my way. And then if I'm done at 9 months, even though it wasn't my 12, it was my choice and I was in a good place to do it. And that's our goal is we don't really care how long you want to do this or what you end up doing. We just want you to feel peaceful and in control of your experience. So I love to hear you kind of be flexible, but knowing that you could go as long as you wanted because you have the tools to do it. It's pretty cool.
that's the word right there, peace. Being peaceful, being at peace of wherever you're at and what decisions you're making to do that. I think that is the ultimate goal right there.
Yeah.
Is peace.
So as we kind of wrap up, is there any advice you would give to a mom? You actually mentioned that you wish you had joined sooner and probably even wished you had this help the first time. But there is something about just having to feel the pain yourself. Like we talk to first time moms who are pregnant and they just don't know what they don't know. And they don't usually join because they want to try it. And I totally get that. So sometimes you do just have to feel it and do it. And I would never wish hard on anyone, but a lot of people do just need that before they realize, oh, I need help. Like I do need something. So now that you've been through 2 different experiences, you're well on your way to hitting whatever goals you set on your second one. What's some advice you'd give a mom, maybe who's a little earlier in their journey than you?
I think the the main piece of advice that I have is making sure that you are paying to your mental and emotional health, through whatever process you're in. So if you have any sort of trepidation or concern about it, if you're nervous about how that will go, um, I absolutely encourage any mom to get help. Now, help might look different to different people, but I obviously I'm very partial to this program because it has been so wonderful and so, like you said, it's balancing the technical science side of things, the logistics of pumping, the science side of it with what is your reality and what you're going through. That it's so good here with this program. So so my advice is pay attention to your mental and emotional health and 100% ask for help, and ask for help the earlier the better. The more you go through, yeah, sometimes people, you're right. Sometimes people need the help before they're willing to need to go through it before they're willing to get the help. But man, if you can bypass it and just start ahead. I
Yeah.
wish I would have started the program when I was pregnant. That's what I wish. Looking back, I wish I would have started when I was pregnant. Um, but yeah, definitely follow your mental and emotional health. And if you're not at peace with that, then do not feel shame in asking for help. Um, there are unicorns out there. They can just do things amazingly, need no help or whatsoever. Things
Yeah.
just go perfectly smoothly, but that's not. I don't think that's the
They're,
normal for
they're
people.
unicorns. Yeah.
They're unicorns. Um,
Um, yeah, I love that. And honestly, it's something that I'm very passionate about as well. Obviously, I've been in this lactation and pumping and being a nurse space for a long time, but the more I'm here and being a mom of 3 myself and kind of being done with that part of my life, that's one of my biggest pieces of advice to new mothers too, is just your mental and emotional health is not a fluffy extra that is just a nice to have. It is super important. And you know what? Moms are superheroes. you can do anything. Like, I have watched moms do so much, and I did it too. Like, looking back, how we do what we do, I don't know. But there is no reason to do it alone, and to do it with no information and no knowledge and no support and reinventing the wheel every time. Millions of moms have done this. And so, I don't know, pay attention to your mental and emotional health and come learn from people who have done it. I mean, it just makes sense to me, but I'm glad that you've had such a good experience in the program. It has been so fun to watch you just kind of take control of your experience and be more peaceful in this whole journey. Just be like, I can do this, And I remember like a month after you went back to work or so, you came in and you said, do you think it's possible if I drop a pumping session? And I was like, let's look at it. Do you remember that? And we went through your schedule and your supply, and I was like, I think we can totally do this. Did you end up dropping a pumping session at work? Do you remember?
I did. Yeah. I went, instead of pumping 3 times, I was doing 2 times. That's been it's interesting, because there's a mental side to that, which is something that you talk about as well, when you're like looking at your output and what it does and how it goes up and down, and like how that can mess with you mentally, even if you're trying to do it, even if you're like specifically trying to make it go down. There is a mental aspect too. Like, wait, it's dropping down. I'm so scared of what's going to happen here. But even if that's what you need to do.
We were trying to do this. Do you remember when we had that conversation? It's hard. Oversupply is hard too. And I don't know. I feel like sometimes people think, oh, it's only those who aren't pumping enough, who are super duper struggling, that join our program. But we actually have quite a few moms with oversupplies who are just, it's hard. Any way you slice this, it's hard. And I love helping moms like you work smarter, not harder. Like, yeah, let's pump less at work because you can. So save yourself some time and brain space. And yeah, I remember that fun moment with you, just kind of having that conversation, not only about the logistics of doing it, but you're right. I remember just saying, hey, here's a warning. This feels really weird when you're bringing this down, but it's supposed to happen. So it's funny to hear you say that too. I remember that now.
So interesting, the way that it plays out, and you don't think of how it would be.
Yeah, I cannot wait to hear an update from you when you are done. Whenever that you decide that to be, I can't wait to hear how the rest of your story plays out. But thank you so much for sharing kind of the journey you've come on so far with us, and we'll be there in the community. So I'm sure we'll keep seeing you weekly on the calls and reaching out when you need help. It's so fun chatting pumps with you, because I think you might be starting down the pump nerd road, and it's always fun to
100%.
It's always 100%. Fun to get into the nitty gritties. Not everyone likes that, but
you have created a monster in me. If I had money to burn, I would get all the pumps and try them all and look at all the numbers and all the specs and all the pattern. Like, you have created a monster in me. I've become a little bit obsessed with it.
It's fun, but you know what? You can just like look through all my data and look at all my stuff and kind of curve the edge there. And it's been fun to help you kind of dive into pumps and explore that too. So fun. Well, thanks again for taking the time. I gotta let you get back to work today because you're a busy working mom too. And so anyway, keep in touch if there's anything we can do for you, but so lovely to hear your story. And if you are listening to this and you resonate with Lauren and her experience and you want some help, there's a link down in the description to apply and get some more information about our program. So we take applications year round, and you can get on a call with our team and see if it's a good fit for both of us. So anyway, thanks again, Lauren. It was lovely to talk with you. We'll see you later.
Thank you.